Seasonic, the heart of your system.
I must confess I was tempted to do this entire review as a mime, but no. You may recall that I actually saw MonsterLabo The First in prototype form at Computex a year ago, so Computex 2018. It was displayed on the Seasonic booth, and the reason for that is that MonsterLabo works with Seasonic, and indeed this system here has a Seasonic power supply, as you will see shortly. So you buy a bare chassis with the cooling system, that's what you get for your money. However, MonsterLabo has supplied this to us as a built system. So I'm going to show you inside it, but I'm not actually building a PC, it is already built because that's how it came to me. MonsterLabo supplies it as either a basic package for €369 or a premium package for €429. I'll show you what the differences are shortly. As a Brit, I don't dare do the conversion for those euro rates to pounds because it's probably going to be about the same. This is a mini ITX chassis, which means that it is immediately reminiscent of the Phanteks Shift X, which is approximately the same height, slightly smaller footprint, slightly taller as I recall, and also mini ITX, and a similar thing which is vertical cooling, or indeed possibly Corsair 1. I think perhaps the reason why I'm thinking about Corsair 1, apart from again the tower kind of configuration, is Corsair 1 and The First. So perhaps it's a naming thing that's kicking that off in my head. So two configurations, the basic for $369 and then the premium for $429. The premium comes with a fan, despite what I've already said about passive cooling, because that's a way you can run this system, and then there's business about a riser card that you also get with it. The two configurations then, in passive configuration, broadly speaking, you can have a CPU up to 100 watts and a GPU up to 120 watts. Active configuration, CPU up to 140 watts, GPU up to 160 watts. It doesn't take any great thinking to realize the GPU is going to be your limiting factor almost certainly, particularly as this chassis does not support Intel LGA 2011 or 2066, i.e. high-end desktop, or indeed Threadripper. Not that there is a mini ITX Threadripper, so that's not a factor. So you are looking at socket AM4 for AMD or Intel LG115X, as it is these days, because that covers a number of generations. MonsterLabo makes the point that actually AM4 from AMD is the better option because much better heat transfer through the CPU, through the heat spreader and out into the system. Anyway, enough chit chat. This is the chassis. From the outside it's all quite sleek. It's got some perforations there, it's got a ventilated top, it's got this slightly peculiar 3D printed I/O panel here, and now I'm going to take some screws out and remove a panel or two. Bigger screwdriver. Worth noting that all these screws, right, one's gone in there somewhere. Whoops. It's worth noting that all these screws are the same as each other. They're all M3 countersunk. And MonsterLabo makes the point that if you buy a white version of this chassis, the screws come in white. And then that top comes away. That's magnetically retained. That's the top vent there. And there we have a good view of the inside, and somewhere we have a screw. Right, let's try tipping that one. You see? Science. Let us see what we've got. Packaging material. Packaging material. And packaging material. So we have the rear I/O panel, we have the bottom of the Mini ITX motherboard, we have the graphics card. There are the 6 heat pipes connecting the cold plate to the graphics card. There is the whacking great big finned heatsink, an enormous great big unit that connects to both motherboard and, or CPU more accurately, and graphics card. And here we have the horizontal noctua fan. Let's take off the third and final skin. And this is going to show us both the power supply and the I/O panel. So there we have the Seasonic SFX power supply. Here we have the I/O, the rear I/O, obviously the front I/O is up there. And we see that it is connected to the motherboard by pass-through cables. So here we have the rear I/O of the motherboard. There we have the system I/O. Here we have the cables between the two. You will note, for example, we've got very few USB. We have 2 HDMI. We have no DisplayPort in this configuration. Looking at MonsterLabo's website, the I/Os that you require, the pass-throughs you require, it's all part of the package you get from them. Personally, for me, I'll be filling up some of those holes because HDMI I'm not a great fan of. DisplayPort I like a great deal. More USB is always better. But that is what it looks like inside this quite extraordinary chassis. To gain full access to the innards of the First, I have to remove these 2 uprights. I would call them struts. MonsterLabo calls them studs. I mean a stud is like a male thread. I think that's similar to like a stud wall, as in the bits of timber that you put the plasterboard on. So I think there's a lost in translation thing going on there. Now, I've done some research, which is why these bits of fabric have been peeled back to reveal various hidden screws, because I don't have a user guide or a manual for the First, and if you buy one, neither will you. What MonsterLabo has done instead is they've put some videos online, about 21 sort of 2-minute clips that show various aspects of the First. It's quite straightforward that there are screws that you have to remove. But through these access holes there are also some tiny little cap heads. They're 2.5mm Allen keys, so that's an M3 screw. But a regular key is too short to reach, so you have to use something like an Allen T-bar. So that's mildly frustrating. So I'm going to do a bit of dismantling and then I'll show you what's going on further inside. That's the more complicated one of the two uprights. And that's the second. I'm not the least bit clear why it is they feel the need to stick fabric over the metal parts that you clearly have to remove to get inside the setup, because after all I have to remove all that packaging material. And there we've got more of it under the graphics card just supporting it. So you have to go inside. Even if you buy a built system, you've got to get inside it, so some sort of user guide would be useful. But that's more of that out. And here we have the first. Behold, with the first torn down to this stage, you can see there isn't really a chassis. The heatsink is obviously a vast part of the structure and the various other bits attached to it. So we have the heatsink, we have the 6 heat pipes going to this cold plate, and the 6 heat pipes going to the other cold plate, which is on the CPU, and then the motherboard CPU assembly attaches on that face, and we have here the graphics card on this face, which I can see is installed from the underside. To remove the graphics card, let's disconnect these cables and disconnect the power. And then these 4 thumb screws. Springs and washers. So it's a female thread going onto a short stud and another. That's quite close to the heat pipe. And there we go. What have we got? Oh, yeah, right. PCI Express riser there. And like so. And then we need to get the graphics card out, wiggle it away from, I'm going to take this bracket out, and then out with the graphics card. A bit fiddly, but it goes. So there we have an RTX 2070 graphics card, minus its stock cooler obviously, with these 4 studs that have been glued in place and a nice dribble of glue along there. So that's been prepared by MonsterLabo. In the event I was buying this as a bare bones chassis and I was having to prepare the graphics card myself, I would be pulling off the cooler and putting these studs in place myself. So put that down on one side, and then this sliding plate goes on like so, and that gives you a bit of movement so you can clamp the whole thing together. Okay, right, that's the graphics side of things. And now let's take a look at the situation with the motherboard. So on the I/O panel we've got a handful of USB connections. Oh, I see, we've got a Velcro strap. Not Velcro, it's a piece of that material they used on those 2 upright struts. So it kind of fabric of some persuasion. So that's the Ethernet and a couple of USB disconnected from the I/O. We've still got the SATA cable from this SSD going around there somewhere. And then we take out these 4 fasteners, which I guess are going to be just like the graphics card. Certainly similar, different size studs however, which suggests that these oh yeah, different fasteners altogether. If we compare that with that for the graphics card, so same cap but different threads and studs going on. And then we pull this out, this, and we lift, and we're also going to have power cables to contend with. Alright, how's this going to work? Oh, we've got USB 3 going to the front panel. Just hold it in place with thermal paste. Yep, thermal paste is holding it in place. Oh, the CPU's remained in the socket. Right, let's take out the power cable. And we've got crucial ballistics memory there. Let's disconnect the main 24 pin. That's the cable going to the noctua, going to the fan header. That's SATA. And we've got USB 3 going, I think, yep, going to the front panel. So there we have it. There's the CPU, which has been yanked out of the AM4 socket viciously. And with a bit of persuasion, the CPU has popped free from all that thermal compound on the copper cold plate. And here we have the innards of the first. The graphics card has been slightly modified, so cooler removed, those 4 little studs have been glued in place. Motherboard doesn't appear to be modified at all. And here we have the 2 cold plates, CPU and GPU, that both go to the same heatsink via 6 heat pipes apiece. The chassis consists of a great big heatsink with the cold plates and the heat pipes. Here we have a large bracket that runs the full length. And then on the front we have those 2 stud struts, call them what you will, that form these pieces here. And in between we've got a bunch of bits and pieces that actually turn it into a PC. It's a fascinating approach, and in terms of PC cooling, I've never seen anything quite like it. We've had a look inside the first, we've removed the packaging, and now the time has come to put the skins back on and do some thermal testing, see just how well this almost passive cooling behaves. We can in fact mimic truly passive cooling by removing the fan connector of that noctua. That's not exactly the same as the passive setup because of course the fan will physically be in place and that has to have some sort of impact on airflow, but nonetheless at least we can remove the active airflow and just see how well this cooler works. The other thing we can do is to remove the grid on the top, which is this 2-part assembly here. It clearly has an effect on airflow. MonsterLabo tells us they're working on a revised grid which will help temperatures. They say that this has an impact in the territory of 5 degrees Celsius. So trying it with the grid removed and in place, that will also be part of our testing. And so to our conclusions about the first. The great big heatsink inside the chassis works. It doesn't matter whether you have it running essentially silently with the fan running about 300 RPM or if you ramp it up to 700 RPM where you still cannot hear it, temperatures are not affected. Remove the top grid, that does drop GPU temperatures by a few degrees. So if MonsterLabo can improve the grid, I'm sure that will help. On the other hand, if they make the openings larger, I imagine there's danger of something dropping inside. I'm quite certain they're aware of that. So there is scope for improving temperatures. Ramping up fan speed faster such that it's relatively noisy, doesn't actually help temperatures significantly, surprisingly. So running a fan such that you can't hear it seems to me to be the ideal setup. If you run it in truly passive mode, on the other hand, which in our case meant disconnecting the fan so it's still physically in place, that raises temperatures both at idle and also under extreme load by 10 degrees Celsius. So it does make a difference. However, the parts were nowhere near throttling. So that is actually really rather impressive. Under heavy load, the CPU, which has a TDP of 75 watts, draws very slightly over 75 watts. The GPU draws 190. Put those two together, the system is drawing about 250 watts in most mixed loads, such as 3D Mark. So the heatsink, the cooling system inside this MonsterLabo The First, it's working for its living. I mean, 250 watts is not to be sneezed at, and it pulls through. What do I think about it? I don't personally see the need for a truly passive silent system. I like really quiet. I can just about hear it now. It's working hard and the fan's operating. My ear's really close to it, but I can hear ambient noises around me which probably aren't coming through the microphone. I can hear them more, much more so. So this up close, it's not a problem to me. If you need a truly silent system for some form of scientific research or medical work or whatever, understood, fine, then you need something like this, minus the fan obviously. For most people, on the other hand, the practical way around the requirement for a silent system is you park it in the next room or you put it in a big insulated box. Your mouse and keyboard can be wireless, you run a long cable to your monitor, and you can separate yourself from your PC by a significant distance, meters if you like. Wireless networking and so on, you know, there are many options for separating yourself from your computer if you want. So I struggle to see the need for a truly silent system. In terms of building inside this, had I been delivered a bare chassis and had to build the system from scratch, I'm sure it would have been hard work. The details, the risers, the pass-throughs and such like, mounting the graphics card and the CPU inside so they're connected correctly to the heatsink, I'm not going to say you're going to struggle, that would be unfair, but you will have to work at it. And the thing is, MonsterLabo does offer two pre-built systems. The irony is that neither of the two pre-built systems on MonsterLabo's website match this spec. The one has a Ryzen 7, which is what we've got here, and a GTX 1660 Ti. The other has an i5 9600K with an RTX 2070, which we have here. The cheaper system with the AMD processor and the GTX graphics is €1390. The i5 system with RTX 2070 is €1890. I don't doubt for a moment if you speak to them nicely and talk about what you want to have built, I'm sure you can come to some sort of arrangement. But to me, buying the bare bones chassis for about 400 odd euros, that you've got some work ahead of you. And as to why you want to go down that avenue, I don't quite get it. Nonetheless, I have no doubt somebody watching this video is going to go, yep, that's the one for me. If you are going down that route, I suggest you talk to MonsterLabo about your requirements. They are French, but they speak blooming good English, so you have no problems communicating, provided you have either French or English. And the premium package, which comes with your PCI Express riser, which you are going to require, is probably the way forward. It also comes at 140mm Noctua, which to my mind is a good buy if you are determined to go truly passive and truly silent. Well, okay. In conclusion, MonsterLabo The First both impresses me and slightly mystifies me. Impressed? 250 watts of power draw is not to be sneezed at. The components run at a perfectly acceptable temperature with the absolute minimum of noise. Confusion? I'm not entirely clear who it's for. If you, on the other hand, are that person, do please put a comment below this video. I look forward to hearing from you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Do hit the bell button, will alert you to new videos as they become available. I'm Neil Woodard for Kit Guru. This is MonsterLabo The First.